Hello, I'm Superintendent of Evergreen Public Schools, John Boyd, and I'm here to present some information about our upcoming replacement levy that'll be on the ballot April 26th. So just a few facts about our replacement levy. It's not a tax increase. It replaces an expiring levy. The school board listened to you and has lowered the proposed rate to represent a decreased rate in school levy taxes overall. This levy funds essential programs and services that are not fully paid for by the state, including student transportation. And it also pays for extracurricular activities, including athletics, orchestra, band, choir, theater, and more. This is a 3-year educational and operations levy. And again, the ballots should be mailed about April 8th, and the voting date is April 26th. So why now? As you may or may not know, our levy failed in February, so we conducted a thought exchange. So it was an interactive survey tool with our community, and we asked a very simple question: what can we learn from this levy failure? And what we learned was that people wanted more information about what the levy pays for. People also wanted to understand the tax implications of this, and those pieces should be reflected in this presentation as we move forward. Hopefully you'll see that. Okay, so why now? Why go back to the voters in April after a February levy failure? Well, one of the reasons is our desire is to avoid significant cuts to student programs, and passing this levy the second time would allow us to not have to do that. We're also coming back, as I suggested earlier, with a revised proposal with lower rates. We also feel like it's an opportunity for us to engage the community and rebuild trust. So one of the ways we're trying to rebuild trust and also work with our community and get input from our community is through our strategic planning process. So we've worked with a stakeholder group to develop a strategic plan, and we're going out to the community right now to get input on that plan. The passage of this levy would help us go further and faster with our strategic planning to support students. So who makes up EPS? You may not know. We have 23,000 students, 4,416 staff members, 38 schools. There are 95 languages spoken in the Evergreen Public Schools. 51% of our students receive free and reduced lunch, and at any one time we have approximately 1,000 homeless students among our student population. So one of the things that people were asking in our thought exchange was they wanted more information about the difference between bonds and levies. So very simply put, levies are for learning and bonds are for buildings. Bond dollars can only be used to construct new buildings, replace schools, make building updates, provide new and updated athletic facilities are examples of what bond dollars can be paid for, and they can only be used for those purposes. Levy dollars fund educational programs and day-to-day operations of schools. So some examples: teachers and staff to support students, extracurricular activities, classroom textbooks, equipment, supplies, athletics, student transportation are among some of the things that the levy funds. Again, levies are for learning, bonds are for buildings. So what's at stake for our children? The loss of our local levy funds, which account for 11% of the overall budget, would require Evergreen Public Schools to make significant cuts in student programs. And we're going to talk about some of those specific programs the levy funds here in a moment. So some of the things that are funded by our school levy are health and safety, social emotional learning, counseling support staff, special education, English language learner support, highly capable support, smaller class sizes. Extracurricular activities, including athletics, orchestra, band, choir, and theater, are also funded and supported by our levy dollars. Curriculum, textbooks, software, student transportation, and we'll talk about each of these in more detail in a moment. So one of the things at stake that are supported and funded through the investment of our levy dollars are health and safety, social emotional learning, counseling, support staff. So those are our security specialists, our nurses, our counselors, our social worker, the folks that intervene with students that have behavior issues and other specific needs related to program for students with special needs. So special education and English language learners are supported We're not fully funded by the state to support those students with their unique needs, as well as highly capable, and it also supports us to have smaller class sizes throughout our school district, particularly at the elementary levels where it's most important to do that. So also at stake are extracurricular activities, including athletics, orchestra, band, choir, and theater. So our levy dollars pay 100% of our athletics, and they also support our music and arts programs to a great extent. Also, our levy funds support curriculum, textbooks, and softwares, many of those tools and resources that students use and teachers use to support the education of our students. Student transportation is another one that's not fully funded from the state. We use our levy funds to help get our students to and from school, but also for all of those extra and special things that students do after school hours, like athletics, field trips, activities, leadership, and all of those important things that are going to be even more important as we move out of the pandemic into recovery. We really need to get our students out and engaged in those things beyond the school day. So athletics and music, as I suggested before, are an important part of how we invest levy funds to support students. And 100% of our elementary students get a music experience, which is really special and unique. 28% of our secondary students are in music programs. 40% of our secondary students participate in athletic programs, so those are significant percentages of students that are involved in those particular activities. I'd also like to point out that we have students in some special programs and get special support for their unique needs. 17% of our students in the Evergreen Public Schools are second language learners. We call them multilingual learners, and they are in the Transitional Bilingual Education Program, and our levies support things beyond what the state and the federal government provides for resources for them. 8.7% of our students are in the Highly Capable Program, and that is a very high number of students percentage-wise, something to be very proud of in the Evergreen Public Schools, that many students participate in the highly capable programs, and a significant amount of resources from our levy are provided to the highly capable program to support students in accelerating their learning, and that's a need that's there as well. And then in our special education programs, we have students, 14% of our students are students with special needs, and our levy funds are invested to support them in many of the ways we talked about earlier. So this is Olivia. Olivia is a senior at Union High School. She's going to be attending Southern Oregon University, and she's wearing a Gonzaga sweatshirt, but that's okay. So she has been impacted positively by her participation in sports, and she speaks to that here in this slide. So as I suggested before, we're lowering the tax levy rate for this particular ballot measure in April. And if approved, this will represent the lowest local school tax rate since 2018. And we just have a slide here for you to be able to take a little deeper dive. That was one of the things that people suggested and requested in our thought exchange. So this gives you a little bit more specific information about how the levy funds are collected and all of the different funds that the school uses to invest in students. And the one thing I want to point out here is the state also provides matching funds for Evergreen Public Schools, but they only provide those funds if you pass the levy. So they're $22.9, almost $23 million the state will provide to Evergreen Public Schools should the levy pass this next time. For some of our community members, you have access to some tax exemptions. So we've put a little slide in here and a link to the Clark County Assessor. If you think you might qualify for those, you reach out to them and ask, and it might be available to you. So again, our levy funds about 11% of our overall budget, and levy equalization for next year, that's the state match that will come as a result of us passing the levy, is about $7 million. So the EP&O levy fills 11% gap in our school district budget for educational programs, daily operations not funded by other sources, including the state of Washington. So thank you for listening to my presentation. I'd like to end with a quote from Zachary, who's a senior at Evergreen High School in the theater program. He's also a National Merit Scholarship finalist. And Zach says, theater gives you a place where people listen to you and they look out for you. Having the ability to be part of creating something on stage is amazing. We all had those programs in high schools that were meaningful for us. For me, it was athletics. For Zachary, it was theater. For other students, it might be music or leadership activities or whatever. So thanks again. Thank you for listening to the presentation. We'll have a frequently asked questions document linked to our website and an email that you can email out to our communications department if you have any questions that weren't answered by this presentation. We want to get you the answers you want so that you can make the right decision for you and your family about the levy measure that'll be on the April 26th ballot. Remember to vote. Those ballots will be in your mailboxes on April 8th or April 9th, and the vote date is April 26th. Thank you.